Hello everybody, we've got the Kohlys here with us today, which is amazing. Actually, we're with them, we're in their lounge, so thank you for having us.
Hello everybody, welcome to our house.
And we thought it'd be great to just interview them. They've kind of finished a season in Newcastle and started a new one in Hilton, which we're very excited about. It's awesome having you.
Yeah.
And I first met the Kohlys back in Howick, here in Howick, at a church we were at together many years ago. And then around 2008, they ended up taking over the church in Newcastle and leading a church that had been in crisis, been through a few crises. And so I know they were a real blessing in Newcastle. And recently in 2021, February, they handed over to the Fergusons, Dustin and Sarah. And so that's amazing. So we just want to hear a little bit about their journey and their story. So I'm going to jump into it.
Yeah.
And just ask, when and how did you hear a call to ministry, to leadership, to eldership?
Yeah. So, Duane, that's actually quite an interesting story, because I was a young man in my early 30s. I was at a church camp where we lived in Wombats, or Bella Bella as it's now known. And I heard a call from God, and it was clear as anything for me. He said to me, "I'm calling you into full-time service in your senior years." So I knew I had to wait a long time, but I knew the call of God waited for me. So I waited for the call of God.
Sure, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And preparation, I mean, how did you prepare yourself for something like that?
How do you prepare? Well, I think God prepared me through life's hard knocks.
I think so.
So I have a QBE, which is qualified by experience. So we went through many church adventures. At no time to talk about all of that, but yeah. So I was in my 50s when the call came.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And then how did you end up leading in Newcastle? How did that come about?
Well, so the church in Newcastle, as you said, Duane, it had gone through a number of crises, and the young man who was leading the church realized time was up, and he had heard via another friend that Neil Delahunt had a couple in his church that were looking to transition somewhere. And so he contacted Neil and said, would this couple be interested in coming to Newcastle? So we said, well, we haven't heard from God. We'll go. We'll go and we'll preach and see what God says. And so the story goes like this. We went and preached on the Sunday. I think it went well. And God said nothing.
Yep.
So we came home. And we were busy gardening on our day off the next day. And as clear as anything, I heard the voice of the Lord say to me, "You must go to Newcastle. It's your promised land, and there's much plunder waiting for you there." It was that clear.
So God didn't speak to me directly, but as soon as Richard said that to me, my heart was totally at peace. I knew that was the right thing. Yeah, wow. So we were in total unity right from the beginning.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
So I went to Neil, I told him God had spoken, and he said, great. And, well, long story short, we went to Newcastle and we...
I think within a month we were there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That happened pretty quick. I
Yeah.
remember your first year there. If you remember, I ended up coming and leading worship a few Sundays.
And we were so grateful
really
to
cool.
HCF.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And maybe a highlight from your time in Newcastle.
Yeah, I think there are a number of highlights. And Love, you might have to help me remember some of them, but I think anybody in ministry will go with this one. The highlight is always seeing lives changed by Jesus for Jesus. I mean, it is so fulfilling. That's why we're in the ministry, aren't we?
Yeah.
To see lives changed, and that's what happened. Newcastle spiritually was a really broken town. There were a lot of hurting Christians. There's some tragic church stories in Newcastle, and so a lot of damaged folks. So we saw the backslidden come back. We saw the confused get order in their lives, and then of course we saw the lost that gave their hearts to Jesus. Man, if that's not a highlight, I don't know what is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah, it was wonderful to see. I think particularly we did a whole crossing the Jordan thing at one point, where people left behind all those hurts and things that had happened in the past.
Yeah.
And we did a whole kind of ceremony thing. And the whole congregation went outside and came back into the church. And it was awesome. There was like a complete change in the heavenlies after that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So we know that, leading is not all a Facebook or Instagram story. It's not all just the best moments,
No kidding.
# loving the freedom.
Yeah.
But maybe, what was something hard about this time?
Yeah, there were some, and everybody again in the ministry will know this. There are some difficult times. I think I've sort of mentally placed 3 things that were difficult. One of them, of course, being in a country town, the financial issues were always difficult. People were not well paid there. So income was always a problem, and also riding on the back of that, some years before we got there, there was a church that had got into the whole prosperity and faith movement, and of course people got manipulated into tithing and giving and offering in a massive way. People were even having to take out second bonds on their houses in order to complete a building project. And so there were many burnt Christians that were just not interested in this tithing story. So income actually was it was a tough one. So I would say that was one of them. The other one, of course, I think again every pastor is going to know this one. You put time and effort into people, and you plow much time and prayer into them, and then they leave bad-mouthing the church. It's a sad one. So yeah.
Oh, great. And I know you're also going to be telling your story at a men's breakfast on your cancer story.
Yeah, so let me say this. The second bout of lymphoma I got, the doctors gave me 3 to 6 months to live. They didn't tell me that at the time. And Jesus appeared to me in the hospital. And the gist of it was, he said, Rich, you and I are going for a ride on a boat, and we are going to get to the other side. So it was an incredible time of growing. I'd like to say this, Duane, is that I'm not sorry that I had cancer either of those times, because both of those times were opportunities for incredible spiritual growth and learning to hear the voice of Jesus. And I still hear his voice the same as I did in the hospital now. It somehow opened my ears to the spiritual realm. It was worth paying the price to get that connection. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Maybe some final, closing thoughts. You want to encourage those who are leading or perhaps even feeling a call, just as we close.
I just felt God give me this strategy, and I have to thank Ray Oliver for his input into us, because Ray Oliver always speaks about the fact that you keep a disciplined spiritual life. And if there's anything I could tell a guy in the ministry and those who wanting to go into ministry, we keep a disciplined spiritual life, because that's not legalism, it's a close walk with Jesus. And so one day I just felt God give me this. He said, write this down, and I wrote it down, I printed it out, and I put it on my pinboard over my desk. It says, you owe it to your church to be whole and happy, to be filled with the Holy Spirit, to love everybody in the church, and seem to have time for everyone. That's our role as church leaders. Because what we've learnt is your congregation is not impressed by the size of the church you lead. Your congregation is actually not that impressed by the brilliance of your preach. Your congregation remembers you by how you make them feel. And that is just such an important thing. So for would-be church leaders, for guys who are struggling, get your spiritual dynamics right. It's far more important to spend time with Jesus than it is trying to work out a brilliant sermon or whatever else.
Someone.
Yeah, or rescue someone. Keep your spiritual walk right.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And I would say, look after each other. Because your marriage is an example to everybody in the church. So look after your own spiritual walk and look after each other. Because that's what will get you through the whole length of your journey.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Man, I think you guys are champions. Done so well and so much to pass on to us. And I know you're just continuing to be a blessing. So thank you so much for this morning.
Thanks
Thanks
for the opportunity.
Yeah.